We are actually live now. I messed up before. And I'm very happy that it's Liz Mistry that's with me today. Started off with an intro to you and your books again, Liz.
Sorry, I'm laughing because I think this is so funny. Right, okay, I'm Liz Mistry. I live in Bradford, although obviously I'm Scottish, but I've lived in Bradford for 35, 36 years, something like that. I write 2 police procedural series. Both of them are set in Bradford, and the first is my Gus Maguire series, and there's 8 books in this series. And this is the most recent one, Unjust Bias, which is about well, what does it say? Being different could cost you your life. And basically it's about conversion therapy, really. And it actually means quite a lot to me because I've got 2 kids who are gay, and the thought that somebody would try to do something like that to them, I mean, not that they ever would, obviously, because, you know, we're quite open-minded about things, but the thought that that could happen to them really freaks me out a bit, which I think is where this book came from. These books are self-published, the Gus Maguire books. And I also have another series. These are my Nikki Perec series, and this is the most recent one, although I've got another one due out in April. This is called Dying Breath. And Nikki Perec is she's of dual heritage, and again, this series is set in Bradford. These ones are published by HarperCollins. What else was I going to say about them? Can't think of anything else I was going to say about those. So the reason my books are set in Bradford is because I just love living in Bradford. I love the diversity. I love the cultural mix. I love the geographic mix. And so Bradford's my town.
And it has one of the most beautiful bookstores in the country.
That is a huge bonus. I don't know if anybody's ever been to the Waterstones in Bradford, but it's absolutely fantastic. It's the old wool exchange, and you go in and it's got these huge big ceilings, and it's just absolutely fantastic. And there's a nice cafe upstairs where you can have, well, I don't know if they still do them, but they used to do sort of trendy sort of cakes like beetroot cakes and courgette cakes and things like that. They were really nice. But I think last time I went in, I don't think they had any of those. So I don't know if it's that, you know, just post-COVID, they're sort of finding their feet again or what. But yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful Waterstones. Yeah.
It is always on my list when I go to Bradford. Sam says, hi, cousin Liz. Deborah has said hello from Tennessee.
Oh, Tennessee. Hello, Deborah. I see. Oh, yeah. Some people have read them. Laura Hamilton. Hello. Laura, where are you from? Are you... Because I have a friend called Laura Hamilton, but I don't think you're the same person.
I think Laura is originally from Ireland.
Who, Laura?
Oh,
okay. Well, Laura, Laura's asking me which series is best to start with, and actually either of them, I think they're very different. I think possibly the Nikki ones, these ones, I think they're probably a bit grittier, and the Gus ones are, I mean, they're still gritty, they're quite dark books, but I think the Gus ones are possibly a little bit lighter. Maybe I don't know actually, because as I'm writing them, I think they're both sort of on a par in terms of you know, grittiness and noirness, if you like. But some people, I think I'm saying to you what people have fed back to me, that they feel the Nikki ones are a bit grittier.
So I've read more of the Gus ones than I have Nikki. I've only read the first Nikki one.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think the Nikki ones are a bit grittier. Because I think Gus, you've got his dad and his mum and everyone in it, and it makes there's more humour.
Yeah.
There's maybe similar themes, like quite dark themes in them, but you laugh more in the Gus ones.
Yeah. I think the beauty of writing a series is that you can you start off, and book 1 is really, it's about establishing some of the characters, but by the time you've got to the end of book 2, as the author, that is, I think anyway, you've created more of a family by then, in terms of your detectives and any other, any other characters that are going to be recurring throughout the books. And you're sort of creating this family and you get more of a feel for them as the book goes on. So I think Nikki's got some humour as well, but perhaps not as much as the Gus ones, because Gus's dad just lends himself to humour, really, doesn't he? So yeah, I think maybe the Nikki ones are darker, definitely. Yeah.
But still great.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm down for reading more of the Nikki ones.
It was quite funny because when I wrote the first Nikki one, obviously it's a change from Gus. It's a woman protagonist, and she's of dual heritage, and which is partly because my kids are of dual heritage. My husband's Indian, so my kids are mixed race, and Nikki was roughly sort of based on my daughter, although my daughter's not a police officer, or and she doesn't have the mental health issues that Nikki does. But a lot of it was sort of based on her, I think, and some of her experiences that she sort of came back to me with. And sometimes people didn't like her. At the beginning, the feedback was like, well, she's got a family. How can she go off and do this job and things like that? And how can she have these mental health issues and still be a functioning police officer? And I'm like, well, if men can be police officers and have a family, why can't a woman be a police officer and have a family? And also, I'm a high function. I have mental health issues, but I'm quite high functioning. When my mental health is okay, and often you can work through it. And I think, to sort of assume that the police wouldn't have mental health issues, or some police officers wouldn't have them, is a bit of a shame, because I think, particularly bearing in mind the sort of jobs they do, the sort of people they have to deal with, the sort of scenes that they have to be at and experiences they have, clearly that's going to impact their mental health, or some officers' mental health. And yeah, they will keep their jobs and they will keep going on and they will do all the things that Nikki does, despite having her mental health issues. But that's just my take on it. And I think, I've spoken to other police officers. The Bridgestocks were saying the other day that a lot of officers do have mental health issues. And I think it's now that because we're talking about mental health more, I think, more officers are perhaps happy to talk about their mental health issues. So, and I noticed Milts is saying there that she's got or he's got the, what was it? I know several police officers with mental health issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and the Bridgestocks know what they're talking about, don't they? So.
Well, yeah, and Graham Bartlett as well was talking the other day. I was on a talk, a Crime Writers Association talk, and he was saying the same sort of thing, that police officers aren't immune to everything that everybody else has, so why would we assume they were?
Had a little bit of a giggle to myself then, because I remembered you and Graham at Harrogate.
Oh no! I don't know if any of you have met the lovely Graham Bartlett, but I hadn't until last July, when we were at Harrogate, and unfortunately, I sort of put my big bloody foot in it, because I had won this book. It was, I think it was Jack Jordan, I think. It was his book, and I wanted him to sign it. So Graham, I was introduced to Graham, and we were sort of chatting, and I said to him, do you know what Jack Jordan looks like? Because I'd like to get him to sign my book. And Graham said, oh, unlike me, he's tall and handsome and this, that, and the other. And I went, oh, but you're quite tall. And I just, afterwards, I thought, oh my God, I can't believe I just said that. So he doesn't let me forget that I've said that to him. But the thing was, I didn't want to say to this bloke that I'd only just met, and you're handsome, which he is actually quite handsome, as Graham. But, I couldn't say that. So I was in a catch-22 situation. I think I need to learn just to be quiet and not say anything. But as Carolyn will testify, I just cannot shut up.
And I think I ran into you in the bar just after.
I think it was just after, because it happened in the bar. I think I was with Catherine Yaff at the time when it happened, and I was just like, oh God, can you believe it? And I'd been so looking forward to seeing Graham as well. But yeah, he doesn't bear a grudge, although he still teases me about it.
Yeah, I think that's very likely. Sally and Deborah are both saying that they love both the series, and I love that the sort of scenes of Bradford and that love of Bradford you have has got all the way to Tennessee in the case of Deborah. It's nice that you're kind of putting the city on the map.
I think City of Culture's doing more than I am at putting Bradford on the map. But yeah, I mean, it's good. It's like, I do think Bradford gets a lot of bad press, and it's partly geographic. It's because, Bradford is a poor city, and that part of the reason that it's poorer is because geographically it isn't really linked with any other major city. It's really hard to get to by public transport, for example. So it means that it misses out a lot on this, I suppose, the infrastructure that levelling up should have brought to the north of England. And of course, it's had its troubled history with the riots and different things like that. But I think on the whole, Bradford is a really happy city. It's the city with the most youth in it of the whole of England. So that's quite, it has very specific sort of challenges. If you want these youth to have the opportunities that they deserve and need, we need investment in it. So that's one of the reasons why the City of Culture is just such a joy for Bradford to have got, because that's going to really put us on the map. And hopefully a lot of these talented youngsters will be able to stay in Bradford and not have to go off elsewhere to get the opportunities that they need.
Tom Reed's got some lovely comments on here. He said he's never been described as even quite tall.
Has been even what? What was that?
He said he's never been described as even quite tall.
Neither have I. I'm only 5'1".
And he also wanted to know, he said, have you got any plans to write a series or one-off in Scotland or Glasgow?
I don't know. I don't know. I never say never to things like that. If I was going to do it, it wouldn't be Glasgow. I don't actually know Glasgow that well, because I was born in quite a small village outside Livingston. It's called West Calder, and it's more or less equidistant between Glasgow and Edinburgh, but my parents used to take us into Edinburgh. So Edinburgh I know much, much better than Glasgow. And I think my accent's probably a bit of a mixture. If you discount the Yorkshire, it's a bit of a mixture of Glasgow and Edinburgh together. So yeah, never say never is all I can say.
And Sam is lying because she says that you're just taller than her by a whole inch. I'm convinced that Sam is nowhere near 5 foot tall.
5 foot? What does she think she is? I'm 5. What did I say I was? I'm 5'1". So is she 5 foot?
Oh. She says she is, but I don't believe her.
We'll have to measure up in June when we do the event. We can have a crime line, like a sort of outline of everybody.
Like a height one.
Yeah. And Graham Bartlett he's quite tall, you see. So he can be on it if he's coming.
She says she's 5 foot exactly.
Yeah, they're from Kilsyth. I noticed somebody earlier on saying that they enjoyed the Nikki series, but they didn't particularly like her. And I think I think some people have fed back that, but then as people have read through the books, they've eventually sort of come round to her, warmed to her, because it's like a journey with Nikki, and she's sort of finding herself, and she's finding her extended family, and she's opening up and becoming less prickly as the series goes on. So that's one of the things I like about writing her, is that she almost develops friendships without even meaning to, and then they really sort of resonate with her because she's a very, very loyal person. She'll do anything for somebody who's her friend. So yeah, I'd like to think that by the end of the, or not by the end of the series, but by the end of maybe book 3, people are really sort of warming to her. I'd like to think that they loved her in book 1 because I did.
I feel like
And I'm biased.
I read that comment as well, and I feel like, having just read like the first Nikki book, I feel like I can see what they're saying. Like, in the first book, she is quite prickly as a
Yeah,
character. You're not quite sure what to make of her, but I do feel like she will grow.
yeah.
Because you
She
can
definitely,
see her growing through the first book, can't you? She starts off
yeah,
very, and then by the end of the book, you've sort of seen her relationships with her family and things a bit more.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, because there was that slightly unsettled bit at the beginning where, you know, she wasn't really in a relationship as such, and you know, she had her family and she had her sister that was a bit of a sort of prickly situation anyway. And then, of course, you're trying to build all the characters, not just Nikki. So there was Saj had to be built up as well, and it's quite hard at the beginning of a series to work out how much page time to give the secondary characters. Like Saj, he's a really important character in the book, and it was hard for me to work out how much page time he needed. And her boss, Archie Hegley, as well, how much page time did he need at that point as well? It's and then it gets easier as the book goes on because, you know, they're more well-rounded as you get to know them as an author. You get to know them, and you know, you just get to know them, so you sort of can write them a lot more easily. It's like delving back into your family and talking just about your family when you write them. That's what I find anyway.
Because you've got 2 series in Bradford, are you ever tempted to get the characters to meet?
Well, the thing is, yeah, I mean, in some ways, yes, it would be really nice, but I don't think I could do that because Gus is self-published and Nikki is contracted to HarperCollins, so I don't think I'd be allowed to do that. And I don't, I'm not sure. I don't know how that would work. So maybe for a short story or something, I could get away with it, but I don't think I could probably do a full novel in that way. Although it would be nice because sometimes they do visit the same places, and Saj doesn't live too far from where Gus works, which is quite nice. You know, when I visit Saj at his house, I just think, oh, I'm just opposite from where Gus will be at work now. You know, it's quite a nice thought. But yeah, it's and of course where Nikki lives is a completely imaginary area of Bradford that I just wanted to sort of create this area that wasn't going to offend anybody, or you know, that nobody could sort of say, oh, she's dissing my area or anything like that. I just wanted it to be a sort of an area that was quite a poor area with a lot of problems, but that sort of, if you like, breached different cultures or bridged different cultures.
Mills says she likes a standoffish female character if she's honest.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And also wants to know where you get your plot ideas from, but I think Bradford and sort of just, I'm not dissing where you live because
no, I mean, every big city's got its underbelly, doesn't it?
It has its issues. Like, I live not that far away from you in Leeds, and there's some crazy things happen near me as well. So I would imagine that sometimes the city can furnish the plot ideas.
Oh yeah, although the most recent idea that I had that's sort of niggling away at the back of my mind, it came from, there was a, I don't know if anybody saw it, but a couple of weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, there was a cold case from Scotland where they'd found a body and they'd recently had the what do you call it when they make the face? You know, they sort of, it was they found the bones, a reconstruction of the face. They'd reconstructed the face of this body and they'd put out an image saying, look, does this guy look like anybody you know? And that sparked off a few ideas for me about a possible storyline. And yeah, so yeah, everything I do, everything you know, everything can be sort of an idea for a story, I suppose. And also what I do find is that once I've got one idea, other ideas and other things that have happened to me or other things I've read come to mind, and I think, oh yeah, that would slot in with that and that would slot in here. So yeah, it's I mean, ideas are just all over the place. So yeah, I just let them sort of fester a little bit, and if they're still there in a few weeks' time, I think, yeah, this is a goer. I could maybe turn this one into a book. So that's what I do.
That one you were telling me before we went live would be good.
Yeah, well, I was just saying to Caroline before we came live, as I was waiting to come on, I checked my email and I had a notification from the Yorkshire Post, and basically one of the local schools in Bradford had gone on lockdown today because the kids had been out doing a PE lesson in the local park, and they'd seen this guy with an axe covered in blood running across the park, and another guy with a knife also covered in blood running across the park. So the school had to go in lockdown. So that's that's the sort of thing that that might stick in my mind, and it might sort of make its way into a book in one form or another. I mean, everything's okay. I think one person was injured, but not at the school. The school kids and everything are okay, and I don't know what's gone off, but yeah, that must have been a bit scary for them. So yeah, that sort of thing can make me think, oh my gosh, what's going on here, yeah. And all this sort of stuff with the Met Police and everything, and the corrupt police officers, you just said, for God's sake, come on. That sort of things all sort of festers away and sometimes sort of comes out. I think it came out a little bit, the sort of police corruption thing made its way into my newest Nikki book, which is called Endgame. It's not actually out until April, but I think that sort of filtered its way in, the sort of, like having bad apples within a police force and how they could really sort of contaminate a whole cohort, if you like, of police officers, or but that was just one thread going through the book. So
Sally she says you make all your characters so real. She'd love to have a drink with Gus and Alice.
It's quite sad actually, because the pub that Gus and Alice would go to quite often, the Hare and Hounds, which is just up from where I actually live, it's just shut down, and it looks like it's not going to reopen, or certainly not as a pub. So that's a bit of a shame, because I used to spend a lot of time in there before I got published. When I was writing the very first Gus book, I'd go along there and I'd spend a few hours most weekdays writing Gus. So it's a bit of a shame that it's it's like the end of an era, if you like. So it's quite sad, really, that that's shut. And the other pub that was mentioned in one of the books, it shut ages ago as well. So that's quite sad, really.
Yeah, quite sad, isn't it? I want Moe's samosas to exist in real life, because they look really nice.
Yeah, maybe I need to sort of approach some Pakistani businessman and say, look, if you thought about doing this will really go down well. I reckon it would actually. This, what do they call it? Fusion food, fusion samosas, mushy pea samosas and things like that would go down well, I think. Yeah. I just wish Mo existed. I think everybody should have a Mo in their life. I think he's really uplifting.
Yeah, I mean, there is that as well. He is just great, isn't he? Hands down, probably that and Gus's dad are two of my favourite characters.
Yeah. I mean, so Gus's dad in some ways was some of the things he says, I can hear my own dad saying. But then some of the things he said, I can hear my uncle saying as well. So it's like he's this sort of combination of all the older Scottish men I've ever met. And yeah, I just love that about him. He's he can't help himself interfering, can he? Bless him.
Mills says Nikki's area reminds her of Stockton and Middlesbrough.
Yeah, I've been to Middlesbrough a few times, and I can't really visualize it, to be honest, although I have been. But yeah, is it quite a diverse area as well? Probably. I mean, really, I think these, the diversity of these books could be in sort of any big city, Coventry, maybe Birmingham, Leicester, you know, there's a lot of diversity in different cities throughout England. So yeah, I think they could equally have been set there. Although I think Bradford's got its own special potion, if you like, because it's got, you know, it's got the Bronte country just on the doorstep. It's you know, it's got a lot of cultural things going on. So I think it's quite
really
special.
good at celebrating its cultures as well, isn't it, Bradford? It's quite. I'm thinking of things like the literature festival and stuff. They draw on that like lovely literary heritage, but they also reflect all of the kind of vibrant culture and diversity that there is in the city.
Actually, because I think we must be the only city that's got two different literature festivals, because there's the Bradford one itself, which is mainly happens in and around the city centre, and it's a really good mix of sort of celebrating the traditional and celebrating and introducing the new, and a bit of political sort of stuff, and it's really well attended. And then you've got Ilkley Literature Festival, and Ilkley also is in Bradford, as part of Bradford, and it's got its own literature festival sort of later on in the year. And again, it's quite sort of, I don't know, it's perhaps it gets more of the bigger, more sort of, you know, like news reporters and things like that come and attend there. But they have a lot of work, creative writing workshops and things as well. So it's quite nice to have the two of them happening. And Ilkley also brings a lot of their stuff into Bradford city centre and does events, you know, in City Park, you know, throughout the year. So it's quite nice. We're lucky to have both, I think, really.
You really are. Yeah, I was going to go and see you at Bradford Literature Festival last year, and then I got COVID.
Oh, so you did. You know, I did I think I did 2 events, and then I ended up being asked to host another couple. And I've only hosted a few times, you know, I'm not experienced like Caroline and Samantha are. But so I had to host these events, and one of them was with a judge, a London judge an Old Bailey judge who'd since retired, and had written this novel. Well, not a novel, it was a factual book about, you know, like how exploring various crimes and how they came to the verdict and why they came to a verdict. And it was beautifully written. Her name was, hold on, can I see her book up there? Might be hidden behind. Unlawful Killings by Wendy Joseph. It was absolutely fantastic. If you want a bit of insight into the sort of crimes that the Old Bailey deals with and how they deal with them, it's amazing, absolutely amazing. Yeah, fantastic. I really enjoyed doing that. I can't remember now what the other event was that I hosted. That's terrible. Oh, I can't remember now.
A long time ago, to be fair.
Yes,
Tom wants to know if your characters tell you where they want to go, or sometimes where they don't want to go but can't help themselves.
Oh, yeah, you know, I know it sounds, I mean, before I sort of got into the series and things, you know, you'd hear authors saying that and you'd think, oh, they're just being divas saying that. But actually, it's the truth. And I don't think I've met an author who says that their characters don't in some way dictate what's going on. Or what they're doing, because I've tried to have Nikki do something and it's just not, it just doesn't work, and until I let her have her head and go her way, it just doesn't fall into place. So yeah, it's really true, it really is true. They tell you where they're going.
I'm just trying to see who the other conversations are from. Sam wants to know how much conversation from the world around you makes its way into the books.
How much
conversation from the world around you? Do you pick up like little sayings and things like that you drop into the books?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the Yorkshireisms, I obviously I've just picked up through my time in Yorkshire. But yeah, I mean, I was once up at the pub, the Hare and Hounds, the one that's now closed, and this made it into, I think, the first one or the second Gus book. And I was just sitting there typing away, and sometimes you can block out everything that's going on around you, and other times conversations at the next table are much more interesting than anything you're writing. And there was this group of older ladies, well into their 70s, possibly even 80s, and they were talking about, one of them started to say, well, I told her she couldn't come and visit on a Tuesday. And I'm thinking, oh, I wonder why she can't come and visit. So why can't she visit on a Tuesday? So I listened in, and it turned out that the reason this lady wouldn't allow somebody to visit her on a Tuesday was because Tuesday was the day that she soaked all her knickers and in a bucket in the bath. In a bathroom. So obviously she couldn't have a visitor in case they needed to go to the toilet, and she'd got her knickers soaking in this bath. And that actually made it into the book, because it was just like, it was too good not to have it in the book. It was just, so gems like that are just like things that stay with you, and you just say, oh, yeah, there's no way I cannot write that. So yeah, so be careful what you say to me, Caroline. Or anybody, or Graham, that might make it into a book as well.
Might make it into a book.
It might make it into this book, actually. Oh, shush, I should be quiet.
Mills said both Yorkshireisms are the best, and that's very Yorkshire, the thing about the knickers in the bucket.
Yeah. Yeah. And the fact that none of them were being very quiet about this discussion they were having. So I think the whole pub must have heard about the knickers in the bucket. So it was fine. But I created a character around that one woman just because of that conversation. She was only in the book for a few pages, but I had to have her in the book. I had to create her as a character. She had to have spotted something. I had no intentions of having her in it, but she became a key character, I suppose, because she dropped in a piece of information. So yeah, knickers and all.
See, that's what I love about Yorkshire, though. You just meet the strangest people at times.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think a couple of times when I was teaching, I had this head teacher who was Yorkshire born and bred. She was absolutely wonderful, best head teacher I've ever had, and she was just fantastic. But the first time I walked into the school for my interview, this woman greeted me, and she was wearing, I think she had one slipper on in one of her shoes, and her skirt, the hem was fallen down in her skirt. So I didn't realise she was the head teacher until she sort of took me into the interview room and proceeded with the chair of governors or whoever to interview me. And I was like, oh, I'm glad I had kept my mouth shut at that point and never said anything tactless. But she was the head teacher, and she used to do that all the time. She'd be always like, she'd have her hem would be half down, or she'd have forgot, she'd have her cardigan on outside in, or and so I'm sure little things that she's done over the years have made it into my books as well. So yeah, she was 90 last year. I went to her party, well, a meal for her 90th birthday. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I think that's part of just being flustered by teaching. I quite often go to school and realise I've got something like my jumper on inside out, or
okay. Yeah, it didn't matter so much for me. I was teaching primary, so if I had anything on outside in, nobody'd notice. Actually, tell a lie, half of the class would notice and tell me and keep telling me all damn day. But it didn't matter because they were only kids, and they weren't going to be saying, they weren't judging me, I hope. Yeah.
They normally just tell you that you're old, or
sorry?
They normally just tell you that you're old, or
I know.
Something like that.
I think what they'd say about me now. If they thought I was old then, when I was in my 30s and 40s, I don't know what they'd be thinking now. Yeah.
Mills has got a family originally from Pickering. He's telling us here.
I can't see that. Oh, yeah. Yeah. My granny used to wear bloomers. I don't know if anybody had any family members that wore bloomers, but she used to wear bloomers, and they'd be like long knickers that were elasticated just above the knee. And she'd bend over, and these blooming bloomers would be showing, and you'd be like, gosh, can't you just wear a pair of normal knickers like normal people? But that was when I was a kid, so that was quite a long time ago. I'm assuming that they've gone out of fashion because I've never worn them.
Have you got so we've got Nikki coming out soon, haven't we? We've had the 5th one. Have you got more Gus books in the work?
Well, I don't know. Anybody who's read Unjust Bias will know that I left that on a real cliffhanger. I mean, obviously, I solved the crime that was happening in the book, but I did leave it on a bit of a cliffhanger, and I need to resolve that. So I will be resolving it at some point. I don't know when though, because I have no idea how to resolve it. So yeah, I'm like, it's hard to know what direction to go in. I think, you know, if I get an idea for a crime to pursue in the book, the other things will sort of fall into place and I'll be able to make decisions then. But at the moment, I've got a secret project that I'm working on. So I can't really say very much about that, but that I'll be able to talk about that in a month or so, a couple of months' time, really. But that's quite exciting because it took a lot of research, and it took a lot of sort of, I don't know, time to think, should I do this, should I not do this, you know, and in the end I've decided to go with it. So we'll see what happens, but I don't want to say too much about it in case it's falls flat in its face, which it could do, knowing my luck.
I don't think that's true.
And then I think, so after this next Nikki, I think there might be another Nikki at some point, but I don't know when that will be either. It's all time, you know, it takes time, this writing, and, you know, and I think I'm quite quick. Once I get started, I'm quite quick at writing it. It doesn't take me that long, you know, a couple of months if I have the idea and I can just get focused and just write. It can take a couple of months to write, but sometimes the actual thinking about what I'm going to write and what the plot's going to be and what characters are going to be in it takes a whole lot longer. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens from here on in. Yeah.
You got an appeal from Sally to resolve the Gus cliffhanger. She's been waiting and waiting.
Yeah, Sally. Oh, it's hard to decide what to actually do about that. Yeah. It seemed a good idea at the time. Let's put it that way. It's one of these things that you do, and it seems like a good idea at the time. But not putting any spoilers out, now I'm wondering if it was the right thing to do or not. But we'll see. It will resolve one way or another. And I'm quite sure that some people will be happy and some won't be. So
I like that you're admitting to not knowing, and I think it's kind of important that, like, authors talk about things like that. You know, it's just I was talking to like Ellie Griffiths the other day, and she's finished her series. I know, and it's so sad, but like I also just admire the fact that she's finished it where she knows is right to finish it.
I think she was, I mean, I haven't read
about it like that.
I haven't read this one, but I felt in the previous one that she was gearing towards that. So I didn't at the time. It's just after when she said, "Oh, this will be the last Ellie Griffiths, Ruth Galloway for a while." I sort of thought, yeah, I can see that it was heading in that direction. But I think, from what I can gather, it's not definite. No, never again. So yeah, I'm putting off reading it, to be honest, because I'm, you know, I want to savor it and I want to be in the right frame of mind, and I don't want to be doing any writing of my own when I sit down and read it, because I'm looking forward to it, because I followed Ruth right from this, you know, day one right through. So yeah. Did she say at all about how difficult it was for her to make the decision, or was it a fairly easy decision for her to make?
I think it was like you were saying, you know that you've written yourself into this point and you're not quite sure where you're going, and you're like, I'll work it out, but some people are going to like it and some people are going to dislike it. And I think that's where the trouble is, isn't it? Because you've then got the balance as an author of deciding, that's where I was going with this question, of like how you do that. Do you think about your readers, or do you just go with what you want?
Yeah. I mean, as well, Ellie's got another 2 or 3 series of books, hasn't she? So it's a lot to take on and think about if you've got to keep them all bubbling along. So, you know, maybe taking a break from one series is the way forward. And, you know, it is hard. And so, you know, I mean, that's quite a long series. I don't know how many books are in it, but it's quite a long series. It must be nearly 20 books, is it, in the series, in the Ruth Galloway series?
I think it's 15.
Is it? Yeah. So it's quite, you know, it's quite a chunk of books to, you know, so I can see that maybe she's just like, oh, you know, maybe I need a break. Maybe I need to pursue other things. So, yeah. Yes, I'm sad for that.
I mean, you've got quite a few books out as well, and you're like a crazy busy lady. You get involved with all sorts of other things. You're hosting panels, getting PhDs.
Ah, now that's done and dusted. My PhD's done and dusted. So, yeah. I'm not as busy as I was when I was doing the PhD. It was like just frantic. I couldn't stop for a breath. But I found that really, really enjoyable. It was so good to be doing the academic alongside the creative, because it was about crime fiction. So it was still about the genre. It was about diversity in crime fiction. It was about inclusion and about it, and it was just a real joy to do. And I'm glad I've done it. I don't think I would start it now and do another one. Let's put it that way, because it was such a lot of work, but I really did enjoy it. And I think it helped with the writing, and it certainly helped with my mental health. I mean, I find, you know, writing helps with my mental health. So, and the PhD, certainly doing the academic thing, did help with my mental health as well. Although I haven't done any academic work since then, but that's not to say that I won't ever do any academic work again. I might go back to it. I've got a few ideas. I was thinking at one point of perhaps working with the university to do an online MA in crime fiction writing through Leeds Trinity. But I've got, you know, it's like, you know, I'm enjoying having a bit of free time, a bit of extra time to myself, and still be able to write. So whether I'll do that or not, I don't know. So we'll see.
I mean, apart from those things that you're sort of saying, have you ever been asked to go to like festivals or work with other universities as like an expert?
No, I've not plugged myself in that way. I've done tell a lie, I have done some presentations at other universities. I did one at the University of Pescara in Italy, and I did one at Lancaster, and I did one at, where was the other one? Yeah, I've done a few talks round and about, and I've also done talks and presentations at the National Association of Writers in Education at their conferences. I've done 3 or 4 of those now. But I've just, since I've finished the PhD, I've just been sort of taking a bit of an easier time of it, and just trying to sort of, you know, just focus on the writing more than anything, and savor the extra time that I have, which has been good. But also it's meant that I've had to try to find a new routine. And I'm not very good at establishing routines, because I'm all over the place. So, because I'm not, and then COVID obviously struck as well. So I wasn't going into university, which affected the routine element of it, because I was going in every day, every weekday anyway. And that really gave me a sort of a structure to my day. And I've had to sort of readapt and readjust and try to formulate a structure that fits in with how I want to live my life, you know, not going into university as much. So yeah.
That's, sorry, it's so interesting to talk to. Sally's leaving a bit early, but she says thank you for an entertaining talk.
Oh, don't worry. I noticed somebody's got tied up catching up with Happy Valley. I don't believe I finished it last night. Oh my. my heart's still beating over time, I think, with the whole thing. Yeah, super. It was super. It was Paul Gitcham. I don't know if people know Paul's work. He wrote a review of Endgame, which is my newest Nicky book that's coming out in April. And he just posted it yesterday, and he had me in tears because he said, you know, he says not in a cheesy way, but this is very much like Happy Valley in terms of the sort of extended family, the sort of the character who'll do anything for those she loves, and you know, it just I was like all of a flutter. You know, it was lovely to get that, because that was the first review I've had of this new book. Well, no, I think it's the second review I've had of this new book. And you always, this time when you send a book off and you know it's up there, people can pre-order it, but you don't know what the response is going to be. And it's really tense because you're like, oh, well, maybe it's just me, but I'm always like panicking in case it's a disaster, in case people really, really hate it. So for Paul to sort of come back with that, I was like, oh, yeah, thank you. It makes you feel good, makes you reassured a little bit.
Have you got a launch event planned for it?
I don't know, because HarperCollins do, or I'm with HQ Stories, so they do a digital first, which means that it comes out on ebook first. So I'll be doing a blog tour, but the paperback isn't out until June, I think, the end of June. So I think I'll probably arrange some sort of, I've not done any physical launches for a long time, but I might arrange some sort of launch for that in June. I'll see, really. It's yeah, it's taking the time to organize these things. They're all very time consuming, so we'll see. But I've got a blog tour coming up, so that's quite nice. And yeah, I'll be doing some articles and things for that, as well as reviews, because I always think in a blog tour, people don't want to read review after review after review of a book, but they are maybe quite interested in how the book was written, or you know, some of the themes in the book, or maybe even an extract or two from the book that'll give them a bit of a sort of insight into what's going on, or an author questionnaire or something like that. So I try to sort of always mix up my blog tours with reviews and articles that I've produced or written, so that, you know, it keeps it a bit fresh and a bit exciting. Well, so it does.
We've talked about this before, haven't we? But I always like how when you did the Gus ones, you'd do a sort of photo.
Oh yeah,
like a little photo tour of the places before the book came out, and then you'd always have like those. You could go back and have a reference.
Oh, maybe I'll do that again this time then. Actually, but yeah, maybe I'll look and see if I can do that again this time. Yeah, I've not done that for a while.
They're always the thing I quite looked forward to when you were bringing out a book. Because I do know Bradford. I don't live a million miles. I've worked in Bradford quite a few times. But it's still nice to sort of see bits that you don't know.
What I find really difficult with, you know, like doing things like that is I think it's a very narrow line between sort of publicizing your book and being over the top with it. You know what I mean? You don't want people to get fed up, but you want people to see the book, and I can never quite work out how much is too much and how much is not enough. So I find that quite difficult. That sort of, you know, blowing your own trumpet sort of thing. It's a bit embarrassing. So the blog tour gives me a chance to do it, because I'm sort of, if you like, I'm retweeting or sharing what other people have said, and so that feels a bit different. But just doing it on my own, I always find it a little bit difficult to gauge just exactly how what people's interests are and what people feel about it. Because you don't want to be sort of spammed by books every day, you know, posts every day about me and my books and things. So it's hard to sort of always find that difficult. I suppose maybe most authors do, I don't know. Or maybe most authors are just better at the social media than I am. I don't know.
I think it's probably a balance that a lot of authors struggle with.
Yeah. And I think as well, I mean, it's time consuming, you know, deciding what to post and what not to post, and you know, it can be quite traumatic sometimes, I think, trying to work out how much to post, not just about my books, but just generally, you know. And so I always feel I can never. You think being a writer, I'd be able to be really witty in my posts, and most of the time they're not very witty. And sometimes, and a lot of the time, they're not even spelled very correctly because I've got fat fingers and I just sort of go typing really quickly and press post before I've actually checked it to make sure the autocorrect hasn't kicked in. And oh dear, yeah. So it's a nightmare, is social media for me. And as for TikTok, well, yeah, I'm not really doing very much on that either because it's just too difficult.
I gave up. I tried it for about a minute and a bit and decided that I was too epileptic for it.
Oh gosh, I mean, you know, I've went on and I've trained. I have got a TikTok account and I've trained it, or I had trained it. I've not been on it for ages. I trained it not to show me all the weird things and to only sort of show me book-related things because somebody told me that was the best thing to do, and that works. But then I have to think, well, what am I going to? What shall I post on it? And I can't be bothered. And I can't take videos. I'm not very good at taking videos and selfies and things like that. So it's lain dormant for a good, well, since well before Christmas now. I've not done anything on it. Maybe I'll have another look at it, another go at it later on in the year. I'll see. Apparently that's the place to be.
Yeah. Turn it over to your kids is probably my advice. When we wanted to set up social media for my husband's business, we set it off our niece.
Ah, right, yeah.
And she did all that Instagram and things for us, and it was like,
yeah,
set it all up, got it all going. Then it back.
My daughter linked my Facebook to my Instagram, but then unfortunately I've done something and unlinked it. I don't know how or why, but I seem to have unlinked it. So what would happen is if I'd post something on Facebook, it would just go automatically onto Instagram. But then I thought maybe I didn't want everything going on Instagram, so I faffed about a bit, and so that's broken. So I'm going to have to get that fixed, I think, in the future. But yeah, mine aren't actually very adept. None of mine do TikTok, so I can't really ask their advice for it. And to be honest, I'm just like, oh gosh. Oh, there's somebody saying that they've seen me on Twitter. Twitter's been funny recently, the past since it was taken over. And I find I'm not getting the same variety of posts that I used to get. I don't know if that everybody feels that way. And I tend to get the same posts by the same people again and again and again, but not the wider range of posts that I used to get. And I find, I don't know if there's something I can do to make it so that I see more things or whatever without actually actively going and looking myself. But it's a bit, so I find it a bit sort of you're not seeing as many people as you used to.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it is a dark place. Yeah, you're right, Deborah. It is definitely a dark place.
And I think you're right about not seeing as many people as well on it. We've got 5 minutes left. Finish us off or round us up nearer the end with something, what you've read recently that you've enjoyed.
What have I read?
Give us some good reading recommendations.
Right, I've read. I've read Anita Waller's Fatal Secrets, which is out today, and that's the start of a new series which I really enjoyed. It's going to be a private investigator series. Well, it is a private investigator series, and she's established it's a brother and sister team, and it's really, really good. Really enjoyed it. Quite dark. You know, anybody who's met Anita would think, oh no, she won't write dark stuff, but it's quite a dark book. Thoroughly enjoyed that. I also read The Close by Jane Casey, and it's a Maeve Kerrigan and I think it's Josh Derwent book. It's one of that series. And although I've read those books from that series before, I've not read one for a while. But this struck me as being quite different from the others because it's set in a close where they're doing an undercover sort of surveillance thing, and 3 or 4 different crimes are sort of incorporated into it, and it was lovely. I really enjoyed that. And I'm in the middle, or no, I'm actually very near the end of Neil Lancaster's, and I can't remember the name of it. That's so annoying. Blood. It's got blood in it. Blood runs. No. Oh, sorry, I can't remember the name of it. But it's the latest Max Craigie one, and it's absolutely fantastic. Really enjoyable. It's about people trafficking, and it's set in Scotland. It's sort of, veers from, sort of Stirling up to the north of Scotland. It's fantastic. Really enjoying it. So yeah, that's what I'm reading. And then I think I'm going to go on to reading a series by Lisa Scottoline, who is she's actually an American author, and I read a series of hers years ago, and I read the full series, and this is it's not a new series, but it's a series with one of the same characters. So I'm quite looking forward to that. I think it might become my next binge read. We'll see. Depends how I got on with the first one in the series. So yeah.
Good choice. Now you've got 2 minutes left. So
2 minutes. Oh, what should we talk about?
Finish us off with a reminder of you and your series is, and maybe for anyone who's new to them, where would be best to start reading them? Any events coming up that you can tell us about?
What have I got coming up? Crime Fest is the next one, and then the UK Crime Book Club one after that. Possibly something at Bradford Literature Festival. I may be doing something there. In terms of the books, the Gus book, and I think, when it's a series, all of these can be read as standalones, but it's probably better to start with the beginning of the series. But as I say, they all can be read as standalones. I mean, most series books can. As I say, I've dipped in and out of Jane Casey's series, and it's been fine to do that. So yeah, so this Gus one, you could read this one, which is the latest in the series. It's book 8, or you could go back and read Unquiet Souls, which is the first. And that one's the 5th in the series. The 6th is going to be out in April. This is my Nikki series. And the first in this series is Last Request. And just a bit of interest for you. The reason it's called Last Request is because I was listening to Paolo Nutini, who's a Scottish singer, and he's got this song called Last Request. And I was listening to it and I thought, I really like that. And then it just was like, Last Request, what could that be about? And it just sort of got my mind going all sorts of different angles. So throughout the whole of the writing of that book, I listened to Last Request twice at least every single day. I used to listen to it. My daughter used to get really angry with me. So I'd be driving to Leeds to go to university, and I'd have it on. And then I'd say, put it on again, Cassie. And she'd have to put it on again. And she'd be like, you're not listening to it on the way home then. But it was just, and it really, so that's where that came from. So yeah, I'd go back and read that. Yeah, if you're going to read any of the Nikki Perec series. And I think we're nearly at time, are we?
No, we are. I was just enjoying you telling us all about your reasons for writing. All that's left for us to say then is thank you.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. And I'm so glad that I spotted that, post saying that you had a spot, because I'm not usually on the ball. Somebody actually messaged me and said, oh, why don't you go and do this? Why don't you go and look at this? It's there's a spot come up. So I was quite lucky to have found it. And thank you for everybody that's come along and dropped in and said hello. Been lovely to see you all. I don't know if I can go. Oh, I can go back up the page. If I've not answered any of the questions, you can direct message me, and I will reply. Yeah.
Thank you for making my day as well. Me for an hour. I've been so excited all day. Thank you.
Oh, that's lovely to hear. Yeah. Well, I can't wait for our next event in June. That'll be great.
Well, it's
Yes,
going to be fabulous. Can't
it
wait.
will be. I'm looking forward to that. Definitely. Especially because I'm going to meet people that I haven't met yet. So that's always really, really nice. Yeah. That's because this is such a friendly group. That's why you sort of meet so many nice people. Yeah. Have the tickets sold out, Caroline, or are you still selling
They
them?
have not sold out yet. And hopefully I'm going to go on a mission in half term and deliver some flyers around Leeds for it. And hopefully we will fill up.
Yeah. It's still early days, isn't it? I mean, you know, because it's still a few months and people don't necessarily know what they're doing and things. So it's a slow build up, I think, for events like these, isn't it?
Yeah, we've sold a good amount, but there are still some left. So yeah, looking to come to an event in Leeds.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, definitely.
Me too. But thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Oh, thank you for having me.